Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Right into it. It's another edition of the Sandy and Toddcast. It's season 5, episode 13. We're calling this Fort Ontario and Other Stuff. She is Sandy.
And he is Todd.
And here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
It's been continually crazy for us recently. So we didn't do an episode last week, right?
Because of the holiday.
Memory,
correct.
Okay? Right. Because of the memory.
Because of the memory. Yeah, that's why.
Because of my memory. Because of the holiday. So I hope everybody had a really great holiday. And we had another busy week, but I also had an amazing, crazy experience. We're recording this on Saturday. I had an amazing experience yesterday at Fort Ontario. So we're going to talk about all about that this episode with a few other fun things mixed in as well.
Well, we got to talk about some fun things, and then we got to talk about some eerie things as well.
Right.
Because something happened in the time that we had this episode and the last time we spoke on an episode, and that was, and we talked about it on our Facebook page and in the group, you had gotten some eerie dolls in the mail.
Right, so let me set the stage a little bit.
All right.
Dave and I were out somewhere one day, and I get home. Now, I'm one of those Amazon fanatics, so I usually get a lot of packages, but I know when these packages are coming to me. And I get home, and we have this I am such an Amazon fanatic. I'm even in a couple of Amazon game gifting groups. I am such a fanatic that we actually purchased a big black delivery box put next to our porch to keep the packages from getting wet in the rain and snow and things like that.
Hashtag poor Dave. I'll just say that right there.
I know, right? I know. So we get home and I open up the delivery box and there are these 2 large packages that are not from Amazon and I have no idea where they're from. I do a lot of purchasing and bidding on animal rescue auctions or just charity auctions in general. And sometimes it's hard to keep track of what I'm winning and what I'm not. So I thought,
hashtag poor Dave. Yes.
So I thought to myself, well, maybe it's something that I won in one of those auctions on Facebook and I just don't remember what it is. So I come inside and I don't pay too much attention to what's written on them because I knew they were an Amazon, but I just figured they were coming from somebody who ran the auction. I opened the first one and there is a doll and it's a lovely doll.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know if it's this one that's in front of us, but we're looking at a picture and basically it's got a little tiara on or some sort of like bow in the hair.
Yeah, and like a ballerina-looking dress on it.
Yeah, with little sparkles on the dress. And
it's an older doll. It's definitely an older doll. And the first thing that struck me before because it was like really wrapped in paper. And in the meantime, Dave is looking at the box and he's going, it comes from like 16085, but there's no return name or anything on it. And he looks it up and he's like, that's Pennsylvania. So now I'm like, what the heck? So I'm unwrapping it. And it's this doll. And the first thing that struck me is I feel energy coming off of it. Now, granted, it's not negative energy. Like, it's not like the devil spawn type of energy.
Correct, right.
But it's still energy. And what a lot of people don't know, because I don't know that we've discussed this on the air before, you and I have, is that I don't like dolls. You know how some people hate clowns?
Right.
I don't like dolls.
We have definitely talked about that on the show. And I'll tell you why I know that in just a little while.
Okay. So I immediately feel the energy. I put the dowel down, but then I see this little piece of paper sticking out of the box. So I open up the piece of paper and it says, "Dear Sandy, I'm so glad to be here with you." Well, now I'm really starting to freak out because there's a doll that I hate. The doll has energy attached to it, and I get that creepy note. Now, let me explain something. I am friends on Facebook with horror writer, director, and producer.
She said horror, not horror.
Horror,
yes.
not horror. Christopher St. Booth. He is one half of the Booth brothers who used to do a lot of shows and documentaries on the Sci-Fi Channel back in the days when the Sci-Fi Channel was actually
Sci-fi.
sort of like the Travel Channel is today.
Yeah.
That's what Sci-Fi originally was. And I love the Booth brothers. I adore the Booth brothers. They do some great stuff. They do horror movies. They do a lot of stuff about Waverly. They did a few documentaries about little children, orphans, and the ghosts of it was fantastic work. So I'm friends with Christopher, and Christopher owns a company that does that sells a lot of occult and woo-woo type of items. I've actually he's done some auctions on Facebook, and I've actually purchased a few things from him that I love. I have this gorgeous pendulum that amethyst pendulum that I bid on and won from him. So, but I haven't been on an auction with him since like April, I think. And this was back in August, and he had one about a week before. So I thought, well, maybe this is still the first package, by the way.
Right.
I thought maybe Christopher got them mixed up somehow and sent it to me by mistake. So I'm thinking, I messaged Todd and I'm telling him, I message you, and I'm like, I'll just have to message him and find out. So
now,
then
let me just say this. I wasn't able to see my phone at that point. So these messages were coming in and I was not receiving them.
Yes. And let's throw it back to last summer when I found that thing in the graveyard, that box.
Right.
And I thought that it was some kind of voodoo going on, and I was freaking out. It was the same kind of thing because now I got a doll I hate with energy attached to it. And also I have a note that says, "Dear Sandy, I'm so glad to be here with you." So I'm messaging you and I'm like, and you're not answering me because you're away from your phone. So I put it down and I take the doll and I said, "Okay, I'm putting you back now." And I put her back in her box. So then I opened the other one, not really registering. Maybe I was in denial, not really registering that there's another package that I'm opening. And doesn't it contain a second freaking doll?
Now, I don't know if this is the first one or the second one. I'm just throwing
the second one.
Okay.
This is the beautiful dolls, honestly. And they're beautiful dolls in beautiful condition. This one has blonde curls piled high with a bow and a beautiful, I'll put the pictures again on
Yes, you got to do that, yeah.
And beautiful dress, all in gorgeous condition, older doll. Wouldn't you know, Todd, this one has energy attached to it as well. I think people think it's crazy, but I think a lot of them do because there is a lot of emotion attached to older dolls, especially children in the old days. I mean, even a lot more than that, 40 some years ago when I was a kid, all the little girls had dolls.
Right.
And your emotions were attached to those dolls. Some girls carried those dolls, had those dolls through college or later and passed them down to their children. So there's a lot of potential for energy to attach to dolls like this, China dolls, gorgeous China dolls that I hate. So now I pull this one out and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So now I'm messaging you again. And I'm getting nervous because one thing that you and I have talked about many times is I don't want unwanted energy in my home. I do not want it. And I'll give you an example later on. I'll explain a little bit more about that. The difference between my home and where I was yesterday. I do not want unwanted energy in my home. I sage. I do the things I need to do. I have selenite above my window and above my door in my studio. I have all my crystals. I mean, I do not want unwanted energy in my home. And so now I'm freaking out. So Dave's sitting there watching all this going on. And now after all these years, Dave understands, and he's, he doesn't think I'm crazy. Like, he gets it. He understands. But I'm still freaking out while he's just sitting there watching me freak out because he doesn't know what to say to me. So I go upstairs. I'm like, screw this.
So now, wait, did you say where this one came from?
Oh, that one came from, I think it was Utah.
Yes, it was. Right.
And the return name was blacked out. And even Dave's picking it up and going, I'm trying to put it up to the light and I can't see through it. It's really, really blacked out. So now I'm like, how did I get one freaking dial from Pennsylvania and one freaking dial from Utah?
On the same day.
On the same day. Okay. And now that one didn't have a note in it because I looked. So now I've got them both sitting there and I'm like, Dave, take these dolls and put them in the garage. I do not want these dolls in my home. Okay. So he takes them out and he puts them in the garage. I put them away. I was really respectful though, because there is energy attached to it. So I was very respectful. I wrapped them back up. I put them in the boxes. I said, Dave, I want you to take them out and then come back in the house. So he takes them out. He puts them in the garage where they sit today. Because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do about this, because I feel like creepy. I need to do something to try and remove this energy from these dolls. I don't want to just donate them somewhere with energy attached to them. So I got to figure out what to do. So in the meantime, I go upstairs and I get my Palo Santo and I get my sage. And now I'm saging my house. I'm literally running around saging my house because... And Dave's just sitting there watching me do it. I'm like, you'll thank me. Believe me, you'll thank me, Dave. So I saged my house. And then Mr. Todd Deering comes back to his phone and laughs his ass off.
Well, let's just back up a little bit.
Okay, let's back up a little bit here.
Because I saw the messages. And I was part of the the group that sent these to you.
You ass. You are such an ass. But you know what?
Well, hold on.
I love you.
So here's the thing. You and I had just had a fight like the week before. And it was not good. And there was some breakdown in communication and stuff like that. I thought, see, the plan was.
I don't even remember what we fought about.
I think because we both kind of went off the grid for a while. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
Nothing that we did personally. It was just that we went off the grid. So at any rate, let me tell you the little plan here. Let me explain exactly what this is all about. So last year, our good friend Lisa Hale has a side business.
I love.
Yep. Has a side business with her husband, and they resell things. So they go to flea markets and they go to auctions, and they get all this stuff. Yeah. And on the podcast, you say, "Oh, I hate dolls. I hate them. They're evil." Blah blah blah. And she said, and so Lisa says to me, "Hey, we should send her some dolls." So she went out and she and her husband bought this lot. I think there's 6 dolls altogether that have your name on them, just so you know.
Oh, dear Lord.
And they've been sitting there waiting to be sent out. Now, we couldn't send them from Oshkosh, Wisconsin, because then you would know who sent them, right? Right. So we had to figure out a way to make this work. Well, it just so happens that a few weeks ago, Lisa's husband had some friends in from out of town. They're from Utah.
Mm-hmm. Which I did not know about that.
No, you did.
I knew Lisa was traveling.
Right. So
but I didn't know about this part.
So she sees, listen, I know you don't know me that well, but would you do me a favor? Could you mail this package to this address when you get back? And they said, absolutely. They loved the little joke. And so that was the doll without the note. And then Lisa was also traveling to see her father in Pennsylvania. And while she was there, She included a note with a doll and sent it to you. Now, the ironic thing is for them both to show up on the same day is pretty crazy. So Lisa has a message for you. I have not heard this. She literally just sent it to me because I was messaging her while you were telling your story.
Okay.
And this is what Lisa has to say.
Sandy, thank you so much for opening your arms, your heart, and your soul to these lovely, lovely orphaned little dolls. I know that they will be so happy with you as their mommy. Oh, and just so you know, there are many, many more to come.
All right. So, yeah. So this, the original plan was we weren't going to tell you. And then we were just, these dolls were just, but I didn't realize you were going to get that freaked out over it. And that's why I pulled the plug on it right away. Like right away, I said, listen, it's me and Lisa, blah, blah, blah.
I know.
But the plan was, just so you know how evil we are, the plan was one of these dolls was going to just come out of the blue every once in a while from different locations.
Well, first of all, I love it. Did I not just laugh immediately?
You did.
Like,
but,
I did.
I
did. But out of relief too. But first of all, I respect both of you, your planning ability, because that was fantastic. Because knowing how I reacted last year with the whole finding the thing in the cemetery and everything, like things like that when they come out of the blue, because I'm a planner. I just sometimes I don't know how to handle them, and especially these dolls, because I don't like dolls.
Right.
And then to have the energy attached to them was like a double whammy. So it was very funny. It was very funny. You guys obviously didn't expect there to be energy attached to them,
but everything's got some energy attached to it. So,
But I mean, there's a difference between I can touch, my pen and then I touch a doll that I hate, and then there's energy attached to it. It kind of, throws it 10 times more. And so I think if there wasn't energy attached, I would have just not freaked out. You know what I'm saying? I would have been like, oh, because I did message Christopher. I did unsend it after I found this out because he would have thought I was nuts. But, I did message him. I figured that probably was it. But it was very well thought out. Kudos to both of you. You know how much I love you, Lisa, and you know what you mean to me. And so it was a great joke. And I actually put it on Facebook after
you found
out.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to kind of see what everybody would think of something like that.
Right.
So I just want to read a few of them because I thought they were great.
Okay.
Brianna Young said, they're pretty, though. If they didn't have energy attached to them, I would take them in a heartbeat for my doll collection. LOL, but that's just me.
We should send them to her. She's the winner.
You're more than you're the winner, the Sandy and Toddcast winner. You get two beautiful dolls with energy attached to them.
You can cleanse that energy off, though, can't you?
I can. Yes, right. I can. I'm going to sage them and I'm going to cleanse it off. So Brianna, if you're listening and you would like the dolls, let me know and we'll make some kind of arrangements for shipping.
Because there's still 4 more to come. So there you go.
So our dear friend Ann Fisher in Texas, she said, oh no, I just got a headache and my stomach hurts, very nauseous. So that was probably Ann, you picking up on me, not the dolls, because my head hurt and my stomach hurt.
She was freaking the F out is what she was doing.
So Jennifer, I'm sorry about your name. Jennifer Vernia. I hope I said that right. She says, yikes, that can't be good. Linda Baslow did say, can you sage them? I said, I can. The dolls freak me out anyways, but so they're in the garage for now. But I did sage my house and I will probably sage the dolls. Vicky Kitty says, nope, just no. Our lovely dear friend Holly Hughes, who I love, she goes, dude, can't you just picture her saying this? Dude, nope, no way. Do not change places with those dolls. I love her. Let's see. Keith Cox says, return to sender. If I had a way to return them to sender, Keith, I would have. I may still send them to Todd when I send him a Stay Weird. I got him a Stay Weird plaque the other day. And my friend Diane Cremens said, no, OMG with the prayer signs. So everybody was kind of freaking out a little bit, said, no. So that's the story behind the dolls. I hope everybody enjoyed that because after the fact, I have enjoyed the story. So
I'm glad
I love
have.
you guys.
I'm glad you have.
It just gives me a whole winter to think about some things that I can do to you too.
Listen, I don't, and feel free to. You know how I feel about that.
I know.
It's all for fun. I'm not sure that you've got what it takes to pull it off, though.
Oh, I already have ideas in mind, Todd.
Sweet Caroline, boom, boom, boom.
Hey, I got one more picture for you, by the way. So this is doll number 1, right?
Yeah.
And I'm showing Sandy the pictures of the dolls again. This is doll number 2. Here's the note. And then this is another picture that I found that I thought, too bad that we weren't on.
Where was that?
You sent that to me. I don't know.
Oh, that was from camp. I think that was at camp. I don't know why I sent you that. Oh, my God. That was probably like 7 o'clock in the morning or something.
It was nice. Too bad we're not doing a video. That'd be great to include in the broadcast.
I know, right?
So that
was that.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what. I know we had some plans to talk about some other stuff too. Let's do that next week.
Yeah.
Here, I'll just say this. Next Saturday, I've got a full day. I have a Paracon thing in the morning, and then I've got a family thing that's kind of a woo-woo thing in the afternoon. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be meeting... for the first time in my life, Chris Williams, who is part of the Ghost Hunters team.
Who you stalk?
I don't necessarily stalk her, but I do really, really like her. I have a lot of a lot of respect for the way she.
I don't mean stalking in the completely negative term. It's more fun. It's more fun. You adore her.
But I also the other person who will be there that I'm really interested in meeting is Dustin Perry, who was also part of Ghost Hunters at one point. And there's a bunch of other people, too, that I think will be very fun to meet. And it's a fundraiser in Ripon, Wisconsin for basically an animal shelter. It benefits Second Chance North Animal Shelter. And for $60, you can go and spend the day. They're all out there from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to do that at Plaza Bowl. I think if you're able to get that picture, we can put that up on this as well. But what we're going to do is in Facebook... we'll put a little poll out there as a question or something asking you if you've got questions for Chris or Dustin or the group or something you want me to do while I'm out there. And then we'll see if I actually do that.
And you can also, guys, make suggestions of things you'd like Todd to do while he's there. And I'm just going to leave that very open-ended. And we'll see how many of them we can get him to do.
Listen, I pulled off.
Maybe he could yell, I have something paranormal in my pants in front of the whole room.
Okay. If that's what you feel you want to do. Just remember, I have more dolls, and we were able to pull this off pretty well. So just be careful what you wish for.
So, guys, I will put up a post on our Facebook page and in our group, Stay Weirdos, Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast. Seriously, in all seriousness, we would love your suggestions of questions that Todd can ask them and get some answers. And also any other questions or ideas you might have about his time at this Paracon next week. I wish I could go.
Yeah.
And it really sucks that I can't go, but luckily you're close enough that you'll be able to go and enjoy it. So it should be really, really fun. Really fun.
All right. You've been to a lot, I have to say, in the last several weeks, you've been to a lot of cemeteries and a lot of things linked to your family. And yesterday you went and took a trip that I'm actually very, very, I told you straight out, kind of jealous of, because I've always kind of wanted to go there. It seems like a cool place. And that is Fort Ontario. So.
Yeah. So, okay. It's kind of funny because I had heard of Fort Ontario, but I literally, this is how horrible I am. And here's me, who's like a huge American history person. And I didn't know anything about Fort Ontario. And a while ago, about a month or so ago, Dave decided to take yesterday off from work. And we said, well, maybe my mom will watch the dog for the day and we can go to Fort Ontario. So I admittedly, I didn't know much about Fort Ontario. For some reason, I thought it was out near Buffalo, but I think I'm mistaking it with Fort Erie, which is in Ontario, Canada. And so Fort Ontario is in Oswego, New York, which is about 90 minutes from us on one of the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario. And I've only been to Oswego a few times in my life and never saw the fort. Didn't know the fort was in Oswego. I wish I had known sooner. So I was very excited that we were going to go to this fort. The fort was built, and I had limited knowledge of the fort as I tell you this story. But I did know that the fort was originally built in 1755. This fort is the fourth version of the fort since 1755 because it went through several wars. You know, the War of 1812, the French-American War, and was actually, I believe, gifted to the United States by the British at one point. And it was burnt down and then rebuilt and then redone and blah, blah, blah. So the latest version, part one of the latest version was, I think, the late 1800s. And it was very instrumental until the 1940s, the early 1940s. During World War II, they decommissioned it. And that's about the extent that I knew of it. I did not know anything. And as I tell you about it last week, you tell me that it was on Ghost Hunters in 2012. Now, I did not remember watching it. I'm sure I watched it. Did not even remember that I watched it.
You know that I was just watching a lot of the old classic shows from Ghost Hunters, and I ran across it literally maybe 2 weeks ago. So that's the reason why I just recently saw it.
Isn't that wild? And so this is funny. Now, one of my abilities that I have, and this is probably my strongest ability from what I don't know if, all right, it may be my strongest. I think it's my strongest. Is that I get a lot of names. And I'll either get them before an investigation, once I set the intention in my mind that I will be going to a place. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily a full-blown investigation. Just knowing that I'm going to a place sometimes will do that. Or it'll happen during the investigation. It happened for me, both of them, at the 1834 Herkimer County Jail investigation last spring. But this time, I was just about to sit down with Dave and watch Ghost Hunters, that episode at Fort Ontario, and the name Josiah comes to me. And I'm like, Josiah. And one of the biggest things I've learned is not to second guess myself. Always go with it. Because I grew up probably having this ability and then thinking, oh, wow, I have such an imagination. So one of the things I do now is I don't second guess myself. To me, the name Josiah seemed like it was a very old-fashioned name, so I immediately assumed it may have been one of the soldiers at the fort. Looked up, there is a cemetery on the fort grounds. It's not inside the fort. It's just outside the fort, right by the water. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it's called the Post Cemetery. And there are 77 bodies buried there of soldiers, of their family members, their children, their wives, 77. And I immediately looked up the names of the people buried at the Post Cemetery. There was no Josiah, but I assumed it was a soldier. So then I thought, well, you know what? Let me look up the origin of the name. So I looked up the origin of the name, and it's actually Hebrew. And so I think it was that I just Googled like Josiah and Fort Ontario. And up comes a gentleman by the name of Josiah Du Bois, who took me down this rabbit hole that I didn't expect to go down. And it really fueled what happened to me yesterday. I did not know this, but during World War II, in 1944 to 1946, and a little after the war ended, Fort Ontario, decommissioned Fort Ontario, was made the home of 982 Jewish refugees. The only Jewish refugees given refuge in the United States during and shortly after World War II. 982 people. And we could go down that path, but we won't. But Josiah's role in the whole thing was that he was, I believe, deputy to the Secretary of the Treasury. He was a lawyer, and he realized in the 1940s all the bureaucracy and all of the anti-Semitic people in the government, and they were actually stopping the United States in a lot of ways, standing between the United States helping the Jews in Europe. And so he wrote a paper about it. And it's a long name, and I can't remember exactly what the name of it was. But he wrote this long paper, and eventually he took it to his boss, Morgenthau, I think his name was, who took it to FDR. And FDR established, because of this paper, the War Refugee Board, of which Josiah Du Bois was a part of. He was made a part of. Josiah Du Bois, long story short, was instrumental in bringing the Jews to Fort Ontario through the War Refugee Board and giving them shelter and asylum for nearly 2 years during the war. They were taken in Italy. They had made it to Italy and were about to be exterminated. And they took 982 of them and brought them there. They call it the safe haven. And he was very instrumental in that. And at first I thought maybe I was going to connect with Josiah. Oh, and by the way, Josiah Du Bois also was Deputy General Counsel. He ran the Nuremberg trial case against a company that manufactured the gas that exterminated the Jews in the war camps, in the prisoner camps. And he won. He was a lawyer at Nuremberg. He died in 1983 at the age of 70 from cancer. He's buried in New Jersey.
I wanted to mention this, and I don't want to interrupt your story because it's so good. No. But people always say, well, why do you investigate and stuff like that? And it's not because I need to know whether or not there's ghosts.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that I need to be able to communicate with others.
Mm-hmm.
But like in this case, this name came to you, and you, like you said, you thought maybe you would connect with him when you went there. But look at the knowledge you just gained about that individual because of your interest in paranormal.
Right. The paranormal and history go hand in hand.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other. I know there's spirits. I know there's people who, are 100% skeptical. I'm skeptical in a lot of things having to do with the paranormal, but not 100%. But I do know what I experience. I do know what I think, what I feel. This is not a coincidence.
And if anybody has listened to our podcast for any amount of time, you may have heard Sandy talk about the fact that, she's had some history with, going to the Jewish Museum and the reaction there, and just the thought process that maybe in another life you were part of somebody that was, we're in the camps and all that kind of stuff. And so to me, this is just another connection for you with that. Mm-hmm. And it came to you because of that connection. You needed to know this information. I didn't know that there were only 900 some people that were brought in as refugees from the camps. I didn't realize that. And you said, well, we won't get into that. I'll just say how ridiculous and embarrassing that is for our country.
Oh my God, Todd, I could tell you things. There were thousands of Jews. I believe it was thousands upon thousands of Jews that the United States could have gotten out of Poland with $160,000 bribe and chose not to. And they most likely all were killed. Thousands.
I will just throw one other note in there about that, and that is because we typically like to think of ourselves as Americans, and we take care of ourselves first. And guess what?
Yeah.
Explain that to your maker when the day comes.
Exactly. And so there was a lot going on behind the scenes. And Josiah, at one point, I watched one of his interviews in the 70s. I think it was 1973. And he basically said that the reason that a lot of this stuff happened was because he literally said, I'm going public with all of the stuff that I know if something isn't done. And originally, when the war was over, they were going to make these 982 Jewish people go back to Europe. They weren't going to let them stay in the United States. And a lot of it having to do with Josiah Du Bois. President Truman in 1946 made a declaration that all 982 of them, or anyone who had passed away during that time, there were new babies and things like that, that they would be granted visas and would have the chance to stay in the United States. So, with that knowledge, I went off to Fort Ontario yesterday. And the first place I went to was the Post Cemetery. You and I were very interested in that because on the Ghost Hunters, it was season 8, episode 17, if anybody wants to watch it. I think Adam and Amy from Kindred Spirits, back when they were with Ghost Hunters, they were in the cemetery. And I believe there were a couple of other investigators as well at another point, could hear children laughing, could see shadows in the trees. And it's always surreal when you see something on TV and then you're there in person. I mean, I've visited a lot of places that have been on television. It's always kind of surreal. And it was very interesting, not to get into too much there. The cemetery itself, I didn't feel a lot in there. But I can certainly understand how they experience things that weren't necessarily from the cemetery itself.
Right.
Because I told you, I sent you kind of like a video as I was walking to it. I was getting the chills. The closer I got, I was getting the chills. I think that the land that surrounds it is probably a lot more active than the cemetery itself. There's not many cemeteries that I've been in my life, and I've been in a million, that I can say are very active. The two that I would say is Oakwood Cemetery in Syracuse and then Bachelor's Grove in Midlothian, Illinois. Those are the two that I would say are actually truly active. I did not feel that way in the Post Cemetery. However, the land surrounding the cemetery gave me chills. So that's interesting because that's where they saw a lot of the shadows. They heard the voices coming from a little farther away from the cemetery, out towards the grass. So I thought that was very interesting. Unfortunately, the good news is that because we were there on a Friday at like 11 o'clock in the morning, there was hardly anybody there or at the fort. Like, we basically had the run of the place. The bad news is that we were right next to train tracks where they were doing construction. So even though I have audio, I don't necessarily know that I'm going to have the best luck with it. But I can go with the feelings I had, which tell me that something is going on in that area that surrounds it, kind of where the trees are outside of it. And there's something going on out there. So that was a very interesting experience. So I was a little hopeful after we left the cemetery and be able to pick up on stuff that the fort would be good. In no way did I expect what I got when I got to the fort. No way. Fort is gorgeous. It's the star-shaped sort of fort. Absolutely beautiful. If anybody's in New York State and you're within a couple hours of Fort Ontario in Oswego, New York, please go. Please go. It will do you so much good to go. It's small. It's not that large. But especially if you're interested in the paranormal, boy, it gives you a bang for your buck. And as I walked up to it, I put my hand on the stone and I could feel some energy coming from the stone. And the land itself is very active. That energy feels to me very old. So it could be Native American. It could just be 300 years worth of fort. It could be a combination of the two. And as we walked in, it's sort of in a circle, like a lot of forts are. I've been to several. One of my favorites is Fort Pulaski in Savannah, Georgia. If anybody's in that area ever, go visit Fort Pulaski. They still have cannonballs in the wall of that fort. It's amazing. And the one down in St. Augustine, Florida is an amazing one as well. So it's in a circle. After we pay, you pay in the right side guardhouse. And then there's a west wing guardhouse to the left of you. And while Dave was paying, I originally went in there, and it's just a little room. And then they have it set up with a bed and a little desk like for the guard. And then in the back, there is a jail cell with an old iron door that probably is literally original, and no light. It's all encased in stone, no cement to be seen. This is the original, maybe not the original, but this is old stone, and it's pitch dark in there. And I had brought with me my basics, my go-tos, my digital recorder, which I ran the whole time I was there. I did not stop. I did not do sessions. I ran it because I find I get a lot of stuff when I'm just running it. I brought my K2 meter, and I brought my Mel meter. I took my K2 meter in with me and started to go, and unfortunately Dave wasn't with me to record it, but I started to go in the cell and immediately was getting hits. And then it just kind of stopped, like something backed away from me.
Kind of like when we were at the lighthouse and we walked in the oil room and it was boom, and then
boom.
That was it.
We got a hit of 122 in the oil room, and then it was dead.
Yeah.
No pun intended. So whatever, it was the same kind of situation. Whatever I caught as I walked in, backed off, and I couldn't find that hit again. So I left. So then we walked to the enlisted men's barracks, which were set up beautifully. They had muskets. They had all kinds. They had, which this was a little creepy. They had like mannequins in the beds.
Ugh.
And they all had like these strange like looks on their faces. It was really creepy.
Hold on while I text Lisa, see if she can get me some mannequins to send you.
But it was really beautifully done. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. This fort has been redone beautifully. It's part of the Park Service, and it's just beautiful. And didn't get really much of anything there. Quiet. And I say this because I haven't listened to my audio yet. I'll give you guys a report on that when I'm done. Then I see the sign for this powder magazine. And I'm like, well, all right, I'll go check it out. So there's this older couple behind me. So the first time, but they were a little ways away. So the first time I go, I've got my K2 meter on and my recorder. And I walk up to the door of the powder magazine of all places, and it starts going crazy.
You know, in that episode, if I'm not mistaken, of Ghost Hunters, they got a lot in the powder magazine as well when they were there.
How
like
crazy
voices and all that
right?
kind of stuff. Yes.
Craziness. So it's going crazy. I'm at the freaking door. So I'm trying to, you have to understand, like when I'm prepared for a full-on investigation, I'm very calm and I'm very purposeful, intentional in what I do, because that's just how I investigate. I'm very calm. Other people get nervous. I don't get nervous about things. And I get made fun of for it, but I just don't get nervous about things because I'm in my zone. This threw me off. I was not expecting this. So now I'm like, and then I hear this couple coming. So I quick turn off my video. I'm taking video of it. And I quick turn off my everything except the audio. And I go the other way out and let them go. Dave was off in another thing. So I made Dave come back with me after they left. I let them get ahead of me. Literally, there were like 5 people in the whole fort the time we were there. And we could have done a full-blown investigation and nobody would have known. I brought him back with me and I videoed it again. And at first, because the important thing when you're doing something like this is controls. You want to make sure that, and again, everything is stone there. There's no need for electricity. You can't put wires really through the stone. I mean, there's no need for electricity. They close at 4:30 every day during the summer months. And I wanted, though, to make sure that I wasn't picking up something odd. So I go back, I put the K2 meter in the same place. I get dead air. I get nothing. I'm moving it until I start talking. And then, boom, it starts again. So I knew there was something going on here, and you can feel it. You walk into that big circle in the fort, and you can feel the energy. So next stop was the officers' quarters, building 1, which is the building that the Ghost Hunters gang said on their show that there were reports of a woman in the second floor. When you walk into officers' quarters 1, Todd, it is almost oppressive. Almost oppressive. The energy and the feeling that you get when you walk in there, it's almost oppressive. You almost feel like you need to catch your breath. I walk into this door on the left, and now my K2 is hitting, but it's not crazy at that point. I walk into this room on the left where they have a TV. They have a lot of TV set up in some of the rooms that give give information about things.
Right.
In this particular room is a slideshow, a silent slideshow with seats of the Jewish refugees that were there. And I'm not really paying attention to the slideshow. Dave was watching it. I'm taking my K2 meter. I'm rolling video. I've got my audio, and I'm starting to interact with somebody in here because I'm setting the intention that back away for no, come closer for yes. Are you a man? Quiet. Are you a woman? Goes all the way to red. And we all know what red means. Red means 20 plus
right.
EMF. It's answering my questions. It was a very short amount of time. It was an incredibly short conversation, but there was a woman in there. As I'm in there, the name Mina comes to me. So I said, is there a Mina here? It says no. So I'm like, all right, well, okay, there's got to be a Mina here somewhere. So I leave that room. I go upstairs to the second floor. I have video of my K2 meter non-stop, all through the upstairs. It's hitting red. It's not even coming down. It's hitting red. There is so much residual energy in that building that literally, like I said, I felt like I needed to catch my breath sometimes. But there is a lot of intelligence in there. My thought, and I said this, I'm going to post some of the videos for everybody.
You have to. I was just going to say that.
My first thought while I was on the second floor was that I'm feeling much more of a female presence in here than male. Now, you'd think officers' quarters, but don't forget, these officers' quarters were almost like 2 halves, and families lived in them.
Right.
So there would have been a mother with children, the wives and the children, and there just seemed, I was picking up men, but I was really feeling women. And I'm kind of wondering if during the safe haven days, the refugee days, there were a lot of women being housed in the
Absolutely. I was just going to bring that up to you. Yes.
Yeah. So the main part of this whole officers' quarters 1 was when I went downstairs. And again, we were alone in this place. I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. I had my K2 meter on. In between Dave and I, there was like a fake rattan sort of like little table. And I placed it down and had an amazing conversation with a woman named Manya, which I now believe that I may have thought it was Mina, but because if you think about it, M with an A at the end.
Right.
Manya and her husband, Ernst, were actually married, one of 2 couples married at Safe Haven, Fort Ontario, during this period. They had met and fell in love on the ship coming over to Fort Ontario to the United States. And he had asked her to marry her on the ship. And they had asked the captain of the ship, but because it was a warship, he wasn't allowed to marry them. He said, you'll have to wait until you get to the United States. So this young couple was married at Fort Ontario. And they're part of the slideshow. So as I spoke to Manya, I asked her a question. She was responding to me and to my questions, yes or no. And it was a beautiful thing to see. And some of the questions I asked her, I asked if Ernst was there and it didn't light up. I asked if Manya was there. It lit up. I said, are you both here? Yes, it lit up. Do you stay here or do you visit? I said, do you stay here? It lit up. Like, I'm talking all the way over to the red. I'm just, at this point now, it becomes so personal. And I have sort of thought through it and processed it. And I do believe that I was not meant to connect, per se, with Josiah Du Bois. I was meant to learn his name so that I could go there with knowledge to be able to connect with Manya.
Yeah.
And Manya actually, I looked it up. Manya actually, I'm not sure yet when she passed. She would be very old now. She would not be alive still. But Manya ended up being a docent at a Jewish Heritage Center in California for many years and told her story. And I feel very privileged to have been able to connect with her in the way that I did. It was just, things like that are life-changing. That's why we do it.
Yep.
That's why we do it. It's not just thrill-seeking. And don't get me wrong, we all thrill-seek. We love it. It is the thrill. But that's not why you truly do it. You do it because these are connections that you can make. You can learn and you can help. And that's what this is all about. So that was amazing. Going into officers' quarters, too, where they heard knocking on the wall in the Ghost Hunter show. Completely different feeling. Not the least bit heavy. Got nothing in that, which is interesting. Got nothing in there. Made one final stop. I'll wrap it up, but we made one final stop in the guardhouse that I was originally in. And this time I decided to use my Mel meter and was getting hits of 80 and 50. I could definitely feel him at that point. I think because, and it was male, I think because I was already in there and maybe recognized I was in there maybe an hour before, it was a little less thrown. He was a little less thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying it, but he was a little bit less thrown off and was more willing to get a little bit closer. I mean, when you get hits over a 1 on a Mel meter, something's going on. And I was getting hits of 40s, 50s, 60s, 80s. Very interested to see what my audio will show up because I did ask a lot of questions. A lot of questions.
Imagine that. Can anybody imagine Sandy asking a lot of questions?
I know, right? But that's the way you learn. So, but I never in a million years expected. All I could think about the whole time, Todd, was our experience at Cana Island Lighthouse and what that was like for us together. And that's all I could think about was this is akin to what we experienced at Cana Island Lighthouse. That just amazing connection, so personal. And I never expected to get what I got yesterday. You go in, I've been to places where you go in and,
Well, and here's the other thing. Who knew if you'd even be able to pull out a K2 meter because there could have been just a ton of people there and that would have been, frowned upon and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the interesting thing, though, is that they do allow paranormal investigation groups to come in. And so our apps group is, you included, our apps group is going to get some details on maybe getting in there next year.
This might have to be the very first investigation fully of the Riverside investigators of the paranormal.
Yes.
As well. We may have to bring out the RIP group to join apps and all that kind of stuff.
That's right. So that'll be really cool. So we're working on that. Life-changing. And the farther away I get from yesterday, the more I have time to think about it and go through the videos and stuff again, the more I'm amazed. And I told you this too, I will never get used to my gift of being able to have names come to me because they've opened so many doors for me, not only paranormally, but learning and history and the things that I've learned from these names coming to me. It's just absolutely amazing. So Fort Ontario, Oswego, New York, go. My recommendation is, we were talking to two of the people that work there. They were dressed in soldier and young lady attire that fit the time period. And they were very sweet and very nice. And we were talking to them, and this is the quiet time of year, which I was happy about. You know, schools aren't there. It's a Friday at 11, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. People are walking their dogs. That's about as much as you get. And so we were very fortunate. So if you do have plans to go there, keep that in mind, either before school gets out or after school is in session. Although I would say now is the time, because teachers aren't going to take their kids on field trips the first week of school. Go now. That's when you go if you really want to be able to interact and learn. So very, very cool experience, Todd. Just life-changing. Right. Like probably one of the best ones I've done, and it wasn't even a full-on official investigation. Just a great connection.
Sometimes those are the best. Sometimes when you take the investigation part out of it and you just go in to have some sort of experience like we did at Cana Island. Perfect.
Yep. I was just going to say that, just like our Cana Island experience, we weren't expecting what we got there either. And look what happened. So.
All right, let's do this. Let's get our spiel in for the week. Here it comes.
All right.
You can find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts, including YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. You can also join our group, Stay Weirdos Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for more fun. Stay Weirdos is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and random inappropriate memes without judgment. Sandy and Todd also have a podcast called the Empathecary Podcast. It's for empaths, by empaths. And if you know an empath, you might want to listen too. Find and like the page on Facebook. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can also help with that too. Mindgarden Media is their latest project, where the dynamic duo can guide you every step of the way in your podcasting journey. Editing, producing, and consulting is what they do. Like Mindgarden Media on Facebook, or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for staying weird.
It's going to wrap up this episode, season 5, episode 13, Lucky 13. And before we go, I just want to mention that we have determined that next season, things will be a little bit different, and we're going to have more details on that. And it's actually a very exciting thing, and we hope you'll stick around for that. So
very good. I can't wait. I am very excited about this. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you next week, and we'll find out. Well, maybe next week we won't. Maybe for the season finale episode, we'll find out how Todd did with Chris Williams and Dustin Perry and everybody else there, and if he made a fool out of himself.
It's going to be a love fest. Trust me. They're going to love me when it's all done. All right, until next time. Bye.
Bye.